There is nothing more frustrating than watching a generational talent go to waste. So far, that's exactly what the Jacksonville Jaguars have done with Trevor Lawrence. He was put in one of the worst situations for a rookie quarterback in NFL history.
I beg to differ, sir.
The Jaguars have quite literally done everything possible to ruin him. Trevor Lawrence has been bad. The Jags have been bad. But that doesn't change one very big thing. Trevor Lawrence was and still is a generational talent, but he is in danger of becoming a generational bust. We all expected Trevor Lawrence to be the first overall pick in 2021, back when he was a freshman and carved up a stacked Bama defense to win a national championship. He looked in every way like a generational prospect during his time at Clemson, and he backed that up every single season. In 3 years at Clemson, Lawrence had over 10,000 yards, 90 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, and only lost 2 games. Trevor Lawrence was 34-2. He lived up to what Dabo Swinney thought he could be. See, Trevor Lawrence has always been expected to be great. He went 52-2 at Cartersville High School in Georgia. That means that before Trevor Lawrence got to the pros, he was 86-4 as a starter. Oh, and in regular season games, he was 68-0. He wasn't just the number 1 prospect in the 2018 class, he is the 6th best high school prospect of all time and is the 2nd best quarterback prospect behind only Vince Young. His entire life, Trevor Lawrence has always won and always been the best player on the field, even in college. That's not how the NFL works, though. The NFL is a different animal, where every single player on the field was likely the best player on their high school team and the best player on their college team. It's a league filled with the best of the best, and you have to have good players and good coaches around you to succeed, and that just wasn't the case for Trevor Lawrence as a rookie. Trevor Lawrence was dumped into one of the worst situations we've ever seen for a rookie quarterback. Jacksonville got the first overall pick for a reason. They were definitely the worst team in the league and had massive holes all over the roster, and it showed, but nobody expected the coaching to be such a big issue too. The Jags hired Urban Meyer to be their head coach ahead of the 2021 season. And yeah, that didn't work out very well. You can make the argument that he was the worst head coach in NFL history. In his very brief time in Jacksonville, he signed Tim Tebow to play tight end, had a video go viral of him with a younger woman at a bar that was not his wife, had a bad temper with players and even kicked Josh Lambo, had a screaming match with Marvin Jones, and told his assistant coaches that they were losers. He did not even finish a full season in the NFL. Meyer was fired after starting 2-11. That's the kind of detrimental coach that can ruin a high-end talent like Trevor Lawrence. And he was bad as a rookie. Lawrence threw 3,600 yards and 12 touchdowns and tossed a league-leading 17 interceptions. There was circling optimism for this season for both Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars, and a big reason for that was Doug Peterson. Urban Meyer was awful, like I said, and Peterson seemed like the polar opposite, a more level-headed coach who has already been a head coach in the NFL and even won a Super Bowl with the Eagles. Peterson was an NFL quarterback and was a quarterback's coach under Andy Reid before he became a head coach. He seemed like the perfect guy to help Trevor Lawrence develop, and I'm sure that's a very big reason why Jacksonville hired him. The Jags have been a very confusing team this year. For a second there, it looked like maybe they were going to end up being pretty good and maybe even be in play for the AFC South. But now we know that's just not the case. The Jags lost to open the year, but turned around and beat the Colts 24-0 in week 2, which was an absolute shock. Now, we know that maybe Indy isn't very good. The Chargers were expected to be a good team this season, and they haven't been great either. But the Jags turned around and beat them in week 3. Through 3 weeks, Jacksonville was 2-1, and Trevor Lawrence was great. Even in week 1, the game the Jags lost to the Commanders, I was sitting there thinking that Trevor Lawrence looked great. He had thrown for almost 800 yards and 6 touchdowns to only 1 interception while completing nearly 70% of his passes. It's been a very, very different story since though. The Jags have lost 5 straight and they're 2-6. Lawrence is now completing just 56% 57% of his passes. He is throwing over 200 yards per game and has only 4 touchdowns to 5 picks. It's really hard to say what happened to cause Trevor Lawrence to just fall off like this. My guess would be that after 3 weeks, teams really started gathering film on Trevor Lawrence and that new Jags offense, and they've pretty much figured him out. Now, all of a sudden, Jacksonville has gone from a team that was hoping to really make a play for the division to just trying not to be the worst team in football for the 3rd straight year. The Jaguars surprisingly ended up being a big player at the trade deadline, but it wasn't a move for this season. Jacksonville traded a 4th and a 5th to the Falcons for Calvin Ridley. Now, Ridley is suspended for the entire season after gambling on NFL games, but he can apply for reinstatement in February. Trevor Lawrence needs a number 1 wide receiver, and while he won't get him until next season, I think it's a great move. Calvin Ridley is a very talented wideout and immediately is the best on the Jags roster. We haven't really seen Ridley since 2020. If you remember, he took a leave for his mental health in 2021 for most of the season, but don't forget how good he was. Ridley had over 800 yards in each of his first 2 seasons and then broke out with over 1,300 in 2020. Not to mention, he's only 27 years old. It will be wild to compare Trevor's weapons from his first year in the pros to his 3rd next season. He only had 2 receivers with over 500 yards as a rookie, and it was Marvin Jones, who is essentially his number 3 now, and Laviska Shenault, who hasn't been very good since leaving Duval. Lawrence did not have the weapons around him to succeed last year, and the Jags have done a good job trying to fix that, even if they did overpay them a little bit. Christian Kirk was the big signing, 4 years, $72 million. Credit where it's due, he's been pretty good. I don't know about $18 million a year good, but good. He has 500 yards and 4 touchdowns so far this season, and once Ridley can play, he'll immediately be the number 1 over him. That's not necessarily a talent thing, but Christian Kirk is best when he's in the slot. That's where he thrives. He wasn't the only wideout the Jags signed either, though. Jacksonville also gave Zay Jones a 3-year, $24 million deal. He has over 300 yards and a touchdown this season. The Jaguars' offense has been solid enough, but I think it's going to get better. Not only has Trevor Lawrence had some more time to get his bearings, but I think Travis Etienne being the number 1 automatically makes the Jags better. I liked James Robinson. He was a good runner. Jacksonville decided to trade him to the Jets, and now it's all about Etienne. And he looked great in his first game as the head man, 156 yards and a touchdown. The yards per carry was 6.5, but his stats did end up getting really inflated by one 49-yard run, but still, Etienne is super talented and should have been getting more carries anyways, in my opinion, but unfortunately for him, the Jags' run blocking has been awful, but the pass blocking has been top 5 in the league. There's a few big names there, left tackle Cam Robinson, guard Brandon Sheriff. It's nothing crazy, but the Jags are good enough for Trevor Lawrence to make some noise. The rest of this season is going to be really important for Trevor Lawrence and his development, but either way, I think in the offseason, Jacksonville is going to go all in on trying to build around him and really trying to see what they have in Trevor Lawrence. And I think that's exactly what that Calvin Ridley trade was. You took Trevor Lawrence with the 1st overall pick, and the Jaguars know how good he can become. They just need to make sure they have the right coaches and the pieces around him for him to be able to learn and develop. Trevor Lawrence is so talented, but he is in danger of being a bust, and if he does, everyone knows exactly who to blame: the Jacksonville Jaguars.